Paris Bennett was only 13 years old when he killed his 4-year-old sister Ella. He gave a disturbing call to 911, confessing what he had just done and was arrested soon after this. He gave an interview several years later where he detailed the crime, and while he did seem remorseful, it was difficult to take seriously considering the terrifying nature of his crimes. He seemed to possess some psychopathic tendencies, but in the interview he states that he is sane. He mostly talks about the length of his prison sentence, the toll it's taken on him, and the details of his sentencing. He rarely mentions his sister or the life she could have had, which doesn't really help his case. It's an interesting interview and has garnered some split opinions as to whether or not Paris Bennett was actually remorseful for his crime or if he was pandering to the justice system so that they would go easier on him.
I remember being angry all day long and thinking all day long, I want to hurt somebody if I'm going to snap. And it wasn't initially Ella. I thought about the babysitter. I thought about going down the street and seeing somebody I knew. And I thought about hurting a stranger. I don't remember exactly what point I decided it's going to be Ella. For a few moments, for a few minutes after it happened, it almost seemed like it was a dream, like it hadn't just happened. Because I had left the room and everything, and I was just hyperventilating. And then I had walked back in and I had looked and I had seen Ella and what I did. And it hit me like a punch in the gut that no, I really just did that. And I called 911. Because I felt like I need to do something about this. Maybe they can do something. Maybe it's not too late.
Monty Ralph Rissell, also known as just Monty, was a serial killer who killed 5 women in the 1970s. He was only 18 years old when he was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences, making him one of the youngest serial killers that decade. Obviously, with the case so interesting, people wanted to talk to Monty and figure out why he did what he did, but a substantial interview would not happen until Rissell was a fully grown man. This did not stop the interview from being as dark as any other interview with the killer. Robert Ressler, an FBI agent, was creating psychological profiles for these killers and spoke to Monty to try and figure out what made him tick. In the interview, Monty details his crimes, showing little remorse while doing so. It's a disturbing interview overall with the killer, who flew under the radar in terms of the public knowing him. But just because he is lesser known doesn't make his crimes any less chilling.
It got worse with each one. Mm-hmm. I mean, not only in terms of violence. Mm-hmm.
You get more authoritarian now?
More.
You're not negotiating anymore.
No, more. It's more demanding, more power involved. Just total control, domination. But I had such power and control over another human being.
Yeah.
I mean, and that made me feel invincible.
Now, you weren't there waiting for somebody, were you?
No. It was just a spur of the moment. I was out walking, and I had all this stuff on my mind, and it just seemed like something snapped in me. I mean, she was just unfortunate that I was there and she came home, you know.
John Hughes is a convicted killer who killed a trucker in 2008. 2 years later, in 2010, he did an interview with KMBC's Laura Moritz, where he claimed that he had killed numerous people, but that he had not been caught. 15 to 20 victims to be exact. He also states in the interview that he wants the death penalty. The fact that he wants to be killed makes it more than a possibility that he is lying to try and get what he wants. Still, Hughes makes some creepy statements in this interview. He half details his other killings and leaves the interview on a disturbing point. He says that if he is released, he will kill again. As of now, Hughes hasn't been charged with any of the other murders, and it looks like he will spend the rest of his life in jail with no possibility of parole and no death penalty. Basically, he failed, and he wasn't able to convince the court that he was in fact a serial killer who deserved to be put down, and he will now have to spend the rest of his life in prison.
Tattooed on the back of Hughes' head, the words, "casualty of war."
Because what you want is to die.
That's correct. That's the only thing worthy of a warrior, I guess you could say. Death.
Hughes wants to be put to death. He admits killing a man in Ohio, stabbing him to death. Then on the run from Ohio police with his girlfriend and 2 other people, Hughes says he killed Valentin Kurlichuk, shot him in the mouth in this rest area north of Platte City, Missouri. Hughes says he had to kill to regain something very precious to him: control. Control over his passengers.
I pulled into this rest area, and that was a way for me to gain control, to show, I don't know, I guess assert my dominance, I guess you could say. That'd be the way to put it. And it shut everybody up for a while.
1 man dead, 3 passengers petrified.
Later they wanted out, but I told them that nobody was getting out of that truck, period, without a bullet in their head. And I asked, did anybody want out? And they said no, so.
You don't feel bad about killing anyone?
Not personally, that I've personally done myself, no. I just view things as objects. People, animals, trees, cars, they're just all the same to me.
What do you see in their face right before they die?
Usually fear.
John Hughes admits to killing people in Mississippi, Missouri, and Ohio.
As far as the murders that I've been a part of, but there's been quite a few.
A dozen?
At least.
20?
Under.
So more around the 15?
Somewhere around in there.
Hughes doesn't believe in God, but he can recite the verse tattooed on his cheek from the book of John.
Everyone that does not confess that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God, and this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and is now already in the world. According to the Christian Bible, everybody can't have the Spirit of God in them.
So you don't have the Spirit of God?
Not according to the Bible. If you're going by that route, no, I definitely do not.
The tattoo of a lion on his forearm is how Hughes sees himself.
I'm a lion, and I see everybody else as men.
And releasing a lion from captivity, Hughes warns, would mean more killings.
I wouldn't let me go, no. I wouldn't advise anyone to, not unless they want a lion loose in the streets.
Because you'd kill again?
More than positive.
Ed Kemper was a serial killer who murdered 10 people from 1964 to 1973. When he was eventually caught, Kemper gave a number of interviews for investigative journalists and the press. While many killers use these interviews as a chance to profess their innocence and lie about something that's been said against them, Kemper was very straightforward, admitting to everything that he had done and speaking in a very candid manner about his actions. Kemper has an IQ of 145, making him a certified genius, so while he may be a cold-blooded killer, he is also a very intelligent and articulate man, which makes his interviews that much more chilling. In the documentary entitled Murder, No Apparent Motive, Kemper gives an interview where he speaks about his relationship with his mother, his methods of killing, and the other people who committed similar acts. It is a disturbing but strangely insightful interview from one of the most fascinating and chilling serial killers of the last few decades.
You were involved in the campus because your mother worked there?
Yes. I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men for much of my upbringing. My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life, earlier life, her upbringing, a failed marriage with my father. I'm a constant reminder of that failure. I hate to distill it down into such, into one-word realities like that. There's a lot that leads into that happening, but that is what happened. They represented not what my mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her, and I was destroying it.
Why did you actually kill the girls?
My frustration, my inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but emotionally I was impotent. I was scared to death of failing in male-female relationships. I knew absolutely nothing about that whole area, even if just sitting down and talking with a young lady. I need to be able to really communicate. And ironically enough, that's why I began picking people up. And I'm picking up young women. And I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside. I could feel it consuming my insides. This fantastic passion. It was overwhelming me.
On the 4th of June 2008, Travis Alexander was murdered by his ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias. Arias claimed that this was done in self-defense, but that immediately looked unlikely. Travis was stabbed almost 30 times and was also shot in the head, so convincing a jury of her peers that this was self-defense was going to be a monumental task, and of course, she failed and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She gave a substantial number of interviews before the trial, during the trial, and after it, and these interviews were all very similar. Arias would softly profess her innocence, play the victim, and act as if she did nothing wrong. Clearly, she was attempting to manipulate the press and the public perception of her, but luckily, this didn't work, and she was given a just punishment for her terrible crime.
I know that you've said that this was all in self-defense, that terrible night in 2008. Yeah. If it was self-defense, though, what would you have done differently that day? I know you've said that you wouldn't have gone over in the first place, but let's say, what would you have done differently in the heat of the moment?
Well, it's hard to, I know what I would do now, but in the heat of the moment.
What would you do?
Okay, in the heat of the moment I wasn't thinking, but the thing that would have made the most sense is to go left instead of right and run out of there. I can't say, I was panicked, I was scared, it was the heat of the moment.
If it was self-defense, did Travis deserve to die?
I don't believe that Travis deserved to die. I don't recall. I do have memory gaps, and I wish that I could take back everything that happened. I never believed that he deserved to die. I flashed, and I reacted, and here I am. And a lot of people have been hurt in the process, and if I could take that back, I would do that in a second.
You know, I have to ask you, when you hear the words Jodi Arias, convicted killer, what goes through your mind?
It's a sinking feeling. It's something that I'd known was a possibility for years, leading up to trial. But now that I am, it's heavy.